Welcome. Good to be with you for another sermon message today. And what I'm going to be talking about today is family. Now, when we hear that word in the Church of God, we obviously think of the God family concept, which is one of the most important truths we can learn from the Bible. So I want to begin by talking about the differences between people, first of all, in the world. When we look around at the world, we see many nation states today. We see some within a certain nation at war with each other. We see Ukraine and Russia right now at war with each other. We see wars going on within households. So there's a lot of differences between people and nations. We can think of language barriers. Again, I learned a little Spanish in school. I knew some Greek because of my mother and my grandparents and what I was taught when I was young. But if I try to communicate with someone in Greek, again, many people will not understand what I'm saying. Other differences between people include our various cultures and the differences with, say, the American culture and an Egyptian culture. Again, a number of differences there. We look at our history. Again, within various parts of the world, there are different histories, different ideas on things. Various histories are written that are different on the same thing. So again, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of differences in this world. But when you think about it, one of the common things that's ubiquitous throughout the entire world is a concept of family life. No matter if you're a Hindu, a Shintoist, a Christian, a Buddhist, you understand what family means. You understand mother, father, son, daughter, relatives, and all the like that relate to this concept of family, the interconnectedness, the relational aspects of family. And not only that, but when you think of friendships, when you think of acquaintances, and you just think of those interrelated connections, you can connect that to familial relations also. So again, social life is important to humanity. Family is at the bedrock of this social life throughout the world and throughout history. Again, thinking about this now when we think of our lives, what is one of the most important drivers for many people in life? It's to get married, okay? Not everyone, I get that. But for many people, one of the main drivers, other than a job, other than maybe some type of a hobby, higher in ranking, I would submit to you, is the idea of I'm going to get married, I'm going to have a family, etc., etc., etc. Now, I know some families are dysfunctional. I get that. But even with those dysfunctional families, those people still understand the concept of mom, dad, or brother, sister, etc., etc. And we see this throughout history. It stands the test of time, the idea of family. You cannot deny it. You can even look in the animal kingdom, my goodness, and see family relationships. I've seen it on the Wild Kingdom show, which is familiar here in the United States. A pride of lions all huddling together, taking care of each other. I noticed recently there was an earthquake in San Diego in California, and they had a film clip of the elephants in the San Diego Zoo forming a circle around the baby elephants. It was amazing to see this happening. So again, family, this concept is ubiquitous within human history, within human nature. Mother's and Father's Day, etc., etc. So I just wanted to set us up for where we're about to go with this concept of family. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about a man who tried to climb Mount Everest. He did not quite make it, but what sustained him and what got him off of that mountain was his idea of family and his relationship with his family members. So that's why family is so important, because it is something beyond our inner working, something that gets us excited, something that gets us motivated. But if we don't have family, what happens to us then? I want to tell you a little tale about the country of Romania. And during the communist period in Romania, some of you may have heard of the dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, and I probably have butchered his last name, but that's something like what it sounds like. And Ceausescu was eventually killed by his own people when the Soviet Union had broken apart. This is roughly around 1989. But he had ruled Romania for many years. And one of the things he was trying to do to make Romania a stronger nation was to increase the size of the families within Romania. And what he did, he decided to tell the citizens of Romania to have more children. They wanted the people of Romania to have up to 5 children, at least if they could. And they really pushed this agenda over the years that Ceausescu was ruling in Romania. Now, what happened is many of these people were poor and they did not have the means to support all of these children within the family. So many of the children were given to the state. They were put in state institutions in Romania, and a lot of research was conducted on these children after communism had fallen in Romania. And what they noticed was that many of the children who had not had much human contact in those institutions, again, some of them were given up at a few months old. So, in those very formative years from the time you're born until the age of 3, it's very important to have some type of connection to other humans. And a lot of these children did not. And they found that when they checked their brains, some of their brain development was diminished. Some of them even had smaller brains than children of the same age range who had had a normal childhood upbringing. So they learned tremendous lessons from these children. Even their physical growth in some cases was affected. The institutionalized children were found to have stunted and delayed patterns of brain activity, delayed cognitive development, and as I mentioned, even physical growth. Now, some of these children were lucky enough to be put into foster care after being institutionalized, so they were able to look at the children who were institutionalized most of their young life, some who had gotten foster care during that early experience, and then those who had the regular upbringing. And they noticed that the deprivation of those who had been institutionalized for most of that time, that deprivation caused a lot of delay, a lot of issues that were not there for those who did experience human touch, for those who did have regular familial experiences with others. Now, I tell you all that just to show you, again, a story about how important it is that we do connect with each other. And again, the family unit is the bedrock for how humans can begin to connect with each other, relate to each other, and then from that stepping stone, we step out into the world and hopefully we get married, we have our own families, and hopefully they're not too dysfunctional. Again, no family is perfect, but the ubiquity of family life is just another indication to me of the fact that there is a creator God who has set all this up. Now, I want to tell you a story right now about how an individual who was about to climb Mount Everest was saved because of his family. Now, what's interesting about this story is the man's name is Beck Weathers. He was a pathologist from Dallas, Texas, and his adventure occurred in 1996. And this is about the time that a lot of people are starting to go up to Mount Everest and beginning to climb the highest peak in the world. Now, if you know anything about mountain climbing at those heights, this is a dangerous endeavor. Everyone knows who's going to climb that high that you could die. Okay, that's just a fact that, hey, listen, before you take part in this endeavor, understand that some things could go wrong and you could die. So that's always in the back of the mind of people who are going to climb these extreme heights. And in order to acclimate your body for these extreme heights, you have to start down the mountain and come up a little bit, and then go down a little bit, and then come up a little bit to various base camps along the path to the summit of the mountain. And what happens is you go to these various base camps, go up and back down, you're acclimating your body to prepare for what you're going to experience at about 29,000 feet. Now, I was on an airplane not too long ago, and they told us we were at 30,000 feet. And again, when you think of that, that's why you're in an airplane. Okay, you can't sustain, your body cannot sustain you being at that height very long, especially if you're immediately at that height. So again, just thinking about this experience of going up to a peak of that height, and you've got to do it at a certain time of the year because it's not as cold. Even though they went in May, it was still below zero. It's sometimes 40 below zero or worse. And the winds and the snows could happen. You could get a blizzard all of a sudden. Again, you're going on ice and snow. You could fall off a mountain. There are all kinds of things that could lead to your demise, as many people have died trying to climb Mount Everest. Now, on this particular expedition, 8 or 9 individuals in these groups that were going up at the time Beck Weathers was going up, 9 or 8 of these people died in that expedition up the mountain that particular year. And Beck Weathers was almost one who lost his life. Now, why was Beck Weathers climbing this mountain? Well, he was a very accomplished person, again, being in the medical field, a pathologist. But what had happened to him in life was he became depressed, and he noticed that when he endeavored to climb mountains, that took away some of this depression that he had. So he was always a high achiever, and this was causing problems with his wife, with his family, because he was always seeking that next adventure rather than focusing in on what was right there at home for him, his family life, and that connection and relationship he had with them. So as Weathers went up the mountain, he had recently some eye surgery. Back before LASIK surgery, there was another type of surgery they gave you that was not as easy as LASIK surgery. And so his eyes had just been operated on. So when they got close to the peak, just a few hours from the peak, he wasn't able to see as well as he should in order to get to the top of the summit. So one of the leads on the hike told him he was going to have to wait, that he didn't want him trying to go to the top because it would be dangerous without the proper eyesight. So they wanted him to wait at a certain level and not go to the summit. So he said, please wait for me here. Don't you go anywhere. Wait at this particular location. So the rest of the party went up the mountain. Weathers was going to wait at this particular location. And he waited until the time that the individual said he would be back by. But what Weathers did not know was that party was in big trouble because of a storm that had hit on the mountain. Everybody got a little bit slow in trying to get to the summit. They didn't get back down in time. And then that caused problems for everyone else who was on this particular expedition. To make a long story short, what happened is Weathers waited, and then he waited beyond the time that this individual had asked him to wait for, because he promised the man he would stay there. So eventually, some people did get back to Weathers, but they were so weakened that they could not get Weathers and another woman who they had with them down to a base camp a little bit lower in the mountain that particular evening. So they asked Weathers and this woman to stay where they were, and they were going to send help later the next day to bring them back down to the base camp. Now, again, the people that left them there were in bad shape themselves. Weathers and this woman were worse off and could not continue. So these people went down to the base camp where there were some other guides, some Sherpas that could hopefully come up and help Weathers and this Japanese woman that were still in this particular position. Again, at this particular time, there was an awful blizzard occurring, and that just complicated everything. And Weathers and the woman stayed in that location. The next day, some people did get up to their position, and when they found Weathers and the woman, they were barely hanging on to life. They had to take the ice and snow off of them, and they were barely breathing. They were so bad off that these individuals thought they were not going to make it. So, believe it or not, they had to leave them again, because in order to get them down the mountain, they were going to have to expend a lot of energy to do that, which would put their lives at risk. So now Weathers is near death. So is the woman. There's no help. And a number of hours later, miraculously, Beck Weathers awakens and notices that his hand is frozen up above his head. He tries to knock it into the ground to wake himself up. He thinks he's in a dream. He thinks he's in his bed at home. But then all of a sudden, he comes to the realization that he was on this mountain expedition. He realizes the woman next to him is now dead. He's got to get down to that base camp. He can't see well, and he's not sure how to get there. But something inside of him reminds him of his family. He remembers his family. And he said that is what propelled him to keep moving without having eaten for 3 days, with no water for 2 days, and being frozen on the mountain for over 15 hours. He now is up and walking slowly but surely down the mountain. He eventually gets to the camp with his arm frozen in a position like this. The other hand is frozen. His toes are frozen. His face is blackened from frostbite. When he gets into the base camp, they can't believe that he is walking in there. They believe they are witnessing a walking dead man. They place him into a tent, believing he's going to die that night because he will not be able to walk the rest of the way down the mountain. Eventually, a individual with the Nepalese Air Force is able to fly a helicopter for the first time to that particular height. And eventually they get Beck Weathers on that helicopter and return him to safety. He ends up losing one hand, losing fingers on another hand, losing toes and part of his feet, and also having to reconstruct his nose because it was destroyed by the frostbite. But he survived. He survived, and he said that the thing that saved him was thinking about his family, that was what propelled him to continue on with no strength or ability. It was pure willpower or the strength of the human spirit that propelled him forward to his family. He eventually got home. His wife did not divorce him. And he realized through the experience the importance of his family, that what he was really searching for by all these adventures was right there in his yard. He didn't need to go to Nepal. He had it right there, the connection to family. Now, that's an amazing story when you think about it, that out of nowhere, this man who's almost dead wakes up. What got him up, I don't know. No one knows for sure. But it shows that within the reserves of the human mind is this connection to relationship, family, or those of us who are believers, connection to God, belief in God, and that God family that is coming, that we learn about through our familial relationships in this life. Regardless of whether or not you're a Christian, regardless of whether or not you know about the God family concept, every person in this world knows what family is. The Hindus, the Shintoists, they understand family. Everybody understands that concept, and I believe that's for a reason. I believe God will use that knowledge that even unbelievers have when he resurrects them in that second resurrection, and they come up and begin to learn that truth of God. Many things will fall into place for them because they have that understanding. When we think back to those Romanian children and what they learn as they develop as adults, and hopefully the families that they form, some of them through that experience that they had as young children will realize what differences they want to bring to their families, and so on in this particular process. Now, something else that comes to us in that story about Beck Weathers was the grace of his wife, who, when she heard he was still alive, was able to make the phone calls to the U.S. State Department, to the Nepalese government, to get this individual to fly that helicopter up there and risk his own life to save Beck Weathers. So we see the grace there in his wife, and knowing that he was almost dead. And again, we're dead men walking, are we not? We're dead women walking. We're leading to our deaths in this life. But even though we know death is coming, because of our relationship, because of our connection to God, we keep going like Beck Weathers. Now, it's interesting that he has a name, Beck Weathers. He weathered the storm that we all weather in life with our relationship to God. Because not only does the Bible tell us about the God family concept, but another important concept in Scripture is to be resilient, to have tenacity, to continue forward and endure. And I want to show you a couple parables real quick here that bring this point home. They're both over in Luke. In Luke 18 and verse 1, we read this. And he spake a parable unto them to this end, that men ought to always pray and not faint. Always pray, not faint. Get up on that mountain, one step after the other. Verse 2, saying, there was in a city a judge, which feared not God, neither regarded man. This guy didn't care about anybody. He's a judge. He's got power. He's going to decide everything. Verse 3, and there was a widow in that city, and she came unto him, saying, avenge me of mine adversary. And he would not for a while. But afterward he said within himself, though I fear not God nor regard man, yet because this widow troubleth me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. And the Lord said, hear what the unjust judge saith, and shall not God avenge his own elect, which cry day and night unto him? Though he bear long with them, I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man cometh, shall he find faith on the earth? Folks, do you maintain your faith despite whatever is happening around you? Whatever the winds are, whatever the storms are, do you maintain that faith and keep going, putting one foot in front of the other? Going through the storm, no matter what's happening in your life? Or do you succumb to the conditions of life? The Bible says, keep going. Don't stop. Another parable along these lines over in Luke 11. Luke 11, verse 5. Here's what it says. And he said unto them, which of you shall have a friend, and shall go unto him at midnight, and say unto him, friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine in his journey is come to me, and I have nothing to set before him. And he from within shall answer and say, trouble me not. The door is now shut, and my children are with me in bed. I cannot rise and give thee. I say unto you, though he will not rise and give him, because he is his friend, yet because of his importunity, he will rise and give him as many as he needeth. And I say unto you, ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be open. Folks, someone going to someone in the middle of the night is going to cause a stir in that neighborhood 2,000 years ago. The fact that this guy kept knocking on that door was an embarrassment to the man who was sleeping in the bed, because those houses were close together. He knew his neighbors would know, oh my goodness, his friend's at the door and he's not going down there to help out his friend, because who's going to come to you in the middle of the night unless it's your friend? It may be a robber, but I doubt he's going to be banging on the door for you to let him in. Again, this would be an embarrassment if that man didn't get out of bed and go help this individual who was his friend. So again, the point of this parable, one of the points of this parable, is tenacity, stick-to-itiveness, to continue to knock, to continue to pray, to continue to reach out to God, even when the answers are not there in that particular moment, or next week, or next month, or next year. You keep going. You don't stop. You maintain the faith. Because I've seen many people fall away from the truth of God, from the faith of God. They've given up. They quit on the mountain. They let the elements take over and destroy them on that mountain of life. Don't be one of those folks. Continue the process. Don't quit. Don't stop, because here's what's coming, folks. Here's the payoff if you maintain, if you don't stop, if you endure to the end. Turn with me to Genesis 1 and verse 26. I recently have conducted a Bible study on the God family concept. So this has been on my mind recently. And in looking at all of the scriptures that deal with this issue, I was taken aback at how many scriptures there are on this God family concept in your Bible. I had forgotten the plethora of scriptures on this topic. Do a study on it and you will see what I'm talking about. I'm just going to give you a few to bring this discussion home. In Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, right from the beginning, when God creates man, notice what he says here in Genesis 1:26. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, over the cattle, and over all the earth, even the mountains of the earth, okay? We're going to have dominion over them, but understand, they sometimes can fight back just like the animals, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. Verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. Now, this image of God idea is very deep. It's very unbelievable when you understand what God is really doing with us, why we are in his image and likeness, why we have a consciousness and a human spirit that an animal does not have, and what that leads to for us in the future. It leads to a transformative experience where we can become like God, not greater than God the Father, not greater than God the Son, but we've got a down payment of God's Spirit marrying up with our spirit that is going to transform us at the second coming of Jesus Christ. And for the vast majority of humanity, I believe they get that opportunity at the second resurrection. But moving forward into the New Testament and going through the story of the family of Abraham. Okay, again, the family of Abraham leads to the nation of Israel. But Israel is what? A bunch of families, folks. A bunch of tribes that started from a family that expanded and expanded. And when we get to the New Testament, it's still a family affair, is it not? Because now it's not just Israel, he's opening it up to the Gentiles and all of those families, which all come from who? Who's the original progenitor of all these families on the earth? You know the answer to that. But take a look at Romans chapter 8, one of my favorite chapters in the Bible, Romans chapter 8. And I'm going to pick it up there beginning in verse 14. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. For you have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. Think of those Romanian kids, the lucky ones that got out of those institutions, that got adopted. They had a better shot at life than the ones who stayed in the institution all those years. Folks, we are in an institution. It's called human life. But we can get out of this institution into a different life. a spirit life with the great spirit that is God our Father and his Son. Picking it up in verse 14 once again, for as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. For you have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit. So the Spirit, God's Spirit, bears witness with the consciousness, the personality in your mind that is you. They connect that we are the children of God. When you realize that truth, it leads you to endure, to continue, to have a faith in what the final outcome is going to be. Just like Beck Weathers, thinking of his family, continued down that mountain. He was a dead man walking. We are dead men and women walking without God's Spirit. We're gone. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 tells you that, hey, if he didn't rise from the dead, we're all done. We're all like Beck Weathers on the mountain. We're dead men and women walking if this Bible is not true. Verse 16, the Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit. We are the children of God, family, folks. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ. He's our elder brother. He's our father. We've got other brethren, our human family, who is part of this larger family, getting into the God family. For I reckon, verse 18, that the sufferings of this present time, oh yeah, there's sufferings. Let's get real. Let's get transparent. There were sufferings for Beck Weathers. He lost a hand. He lost some fingers. He lost his nose. He lost his toes. There is suffering, but there's a payoff in the end. He said that he would not lose that experience on Everest for anything that happened in his life. Get that. Get that, those of you who go through more suffering maybe than the average person. Those of you who have lost loved ones, those of you with cancer or diseases, or have lost people in your lives in auto accidents or whatever it may be. Yeah, they're suffering, but this doesn't last. This does not last. Keep it going. Hold on. Don't let go. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Wow. That is heavy, folks. The glory that shall be revealed in us. That word glory is used about God, folks. Again, I'm not going to do a study on that right now because we don't have the time, but you know what I'm talking about. Do the research on that word glory and what it means in your New Testament. Be like Beck Weathers. Keep that story in mind when you're at your lowest point, that this guy got up and kept going for a great payoff, getting back to his family and realizing what was most important all along was always there. He didn't need to climb the mountain to find it. It was always there. So is your relationship with God. It is always there. He's with you all the time. You don't need to be going after this idol. You don't need to be going after that idol. You don't need to give up the ship just because things are not going as you wanted them. I recently heard a story about a young man in the church. Great speaker. He's no longer in the church. He's on atheistic podcasts and talking about an atheistic perspective in his life right now. Shocking, yes, but he grew up in the church. He grew up in the church. I did not grow up in the church. I had to weather storms to get into the church, and I'm never going to give it up. Some of you who've grown up in the church, could that be something to think about? Did you ever prove this to yourself? Are you going to be pushed and pulled by all these other ideas out there, or are you going to endure to the end? Notice Romans 8:29. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his son. Remember, we read about that image in Genesis. Folks, we can be conformed to the image of his son. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand the ramifications of that? Jesus is God. He's in glory. He's a powerful spirit being. He's not a dead man walking, okay? As we are, we can have that complete transformative experience that he might be the firstborn among many. Hey, uses the word many there, brethren. We think the church is small. So what's this many brethren? I submit to you, it has to do with that second resurrection also. Why the use of this word many? Again, he's firstborn, then some first fruits come along, but then there's going to be a lot more coming, because what's it all about? It's a family affair, folks. It's not individuals. It's a family affair. We can become like God because God became like us to give us this stupendous opportunity. When you think about this stupendous opportunity that God has given you, just like Beck Weathers woke up, folks, I hope that that truth keeps you awake all the time and enduring all the time for the sufferings you must go through to get to the other side. Keep on keeping on.